My name is Emily Carter. I am 34 years old and I work as a registered nurse in Hawthorne, Georgia. 19 years ago, my parents put me out of their home on the same evening I forced myself to say the words. I was pregnant. My father looked at me like I had become a bad expense on a balance sheet and said there was room for just one future in that house worth paying for. He did not mean mine. I slept that first night curled on a stranger's porch, with a plastic trash sack pressed against my legs, and a baby no one wanted me to keep growing inside me. Nearly 2 decades later, those same people came back looking for the grandson they had already imagined. They expected a boy who might carry their name, repair their reputation, maybe even rescue the son they had chosen instead of me. They were wrong about everything. What happened at the county health fair in Pine Hollow is still being repeated in lowered voices all over town. Welcome back to Dull Pain Stories. This is where we tell stories about families broken by betrayal and by the quiet moments when the truth stops asking permission to be heard. November 2007. I was 16, seated at the kitchen table inside my parents' house in Pine Hollow, Georgia. The whole town had maybe 1,500 people. One small supermarket, one feed store, one church everyone pretended was not the center of local gossip. My father, Robert Carter, sat opposite me with both hands flat on the table. My mother, Linda Carter, stood behind him with a dish towel in her hands, rubbing the same clean plate until the shine dulled. I forced myself to say the words, I was pregnant. For a moment, my father did not raise his voice. He went very still. The refrigerator hummed. The old wall clock clicked so loudly that every second felt like another person judging me. Then he stood, and the chair dragged across the faded linoleum with a sound sharp enough to make me flinch. You just ruined the one chance you had, he said. His tone was calm, that made it colder. My mother set the plate down but kept her eyes on the counter. My father pointed toward the stairs. Get one bag, not two, one. I looked to my mother to move, to argue, to step between us. To say my name in any tone that meant I was still her child. She picked the plate back up. On the staircase, my younger brother, Ryan Carter, leaned against the banister in his gym shorts. He was 14, sweaty from basketball practice, watching my life collapse like it was a scene on television. He never told our father to stop. He never asked where I was supposed to go. When my father finished speaking, Ryan asked the only thing that interested him. So does that mean I get her room? My father ignored him. He was staring at me, but not in a way that saw me. His eyes had already moved beyond me as if he were removing me from every family picture in the house. He kept the front door pulled wide. This family can support one future, Emily, he said. It will not be yours. I walked out carrying a black trash bag with my clothes stuffed inside. My mother kept wiping that plate. My brother looked down the hall toward my bedroom, already claiming it. The door shut behind me. Before I reached the end of the driveway, the porch light clicked off. I walked close to 3 miles that night. November in Georgia can fool you. The day had been warm enough for short sleeves, but after dark the cold came up from the pavement. I had forgotten my coat. The trash bag slapped against my knee every few steps. I was 9 weeks pregnant, 16 years old, without cell phone, no cash, and no idea how to survive the next hour. The only adult who came to mind was Margaret Ellis. Margaret was 72 and lived in Hawthorne, the nearest larger town, roughly 35 minutes by car. I had met her when I was 13 at a church summer program where she ran the craft table. She had taught me to knit, sitting beside me while other girls laughed at my crooked rows. Once, when nobody else was near enough to hear, she told me I had patient hands and a sensible mind. It was the gentlest thing any grown-up had said to me in years. I made it to a truck stop gas station on State Road 18 and used the pay phone by the ice machine to call her collect. Moths flung themselves at the buzzing fluorescent lights while I listened to the line ring. Margaret answered on the 5th ring. She did not ask why I was calling from a pay phone. She did not ask why my parents were not with me. She said, "Stay by the door where it is lit. I am leaving now." 38 minutes later, she pulled up in her old blue sedan, leaned across the seat, and opened the passenger door. She drove me back to Hawthorne without asking for the full story. When we reached her little white house, she walked me to the spare room. "Clean sheets are on the bed," she said. "Bathroom is the second door. The rest can wait until morning." I put the plastic sack on the floor and began searching for the baby blanket I had been knitting. Pale yellow yarn, plain stitches, uneven edges. I had been making it for weeks with the stubborn hope of a girl who did not know what else to do. I pulled out shirts, jeans, school notebooks, socks. The blanket was gone. My mother had taken it. I perched on the edge of Margaret's guest bed and looked at my empty hands until they blurred. Margaret never asked me for rent. She never handed me a list of rules that made her help feel like another debt. She simply made space. I earned my GED in 7 months at her kitchen table, studying between nausea and exhaustion while Margaret watched game shows in the living room with the volume low. My daughter, Madison Carter, was born in June 2008. She weighed 6 pounds, 12 ounces, and screamed so hard the nurse laughed and said, "That one has opinions already." I was 16. The first time I held Madison against my chest, I made one promise that I have never broken. No one would ever teach my child she was a future not worth choosing. Margaret watched Madison while I started classes at Cedar Ridge Community College that fall. I spread my books across the living room floor after midnight feedings, with index cards spread around me and baby bottles drying in the kitchen. Margaret had her own quiet system. On nights when she knew I was studying, she would place a glass of milk on the floor by my door and tap once on the wall. She did not come in. She never made a speech about sacrifice or discipline. She just tapped once and I would know the milk was there. That went on for years. Community college first, and after that the nursing program at Blue River Technical College. Clinical rotations, exams, late-night laundry, Madison's first steps. Madison's first word turned out to be no, and honestly I respected the confidence. My RN license came through in 2014. I had just turned 22. During the ceremony, I searched into the audience and saw Margaret in her church dress with Madison sitting on her lap. Madison clapped with both hands like she had personally passed pharmacology. The seats on either side of them stayed vacant. My father was not there. My mother was not there. Neither was my brother. After the first year, I gave up checking the mailbox for a letter from Pine Hollow. Some doors, once shut, do not leave even a line of light under them. While I was building a life on Margaret's living room carpet, this is what was happening back in Pine Hollow. Ryan moved into my bedroom the week I left. It was the larger room, the one with 2 windows and the view of the pecan tree. My parents took the $9,700 they had saved in an education account for me. I knew the exact amount because Margaret helped me request the records years later. They used that money for Ryan's first year at Coastal State University. He lasted less than 10 months. He quit before the end of his second semester because, as he told my parents, the instructors had it in for him. My father did not see failure. He saw potential that needed one more payment. He brought Ryan into his plumbing company, Carter & Son Pipeworks. Ryan lasted 5 months. Then he tried selling boats. Then he tried starting a pressure washing business with a borrowed trailer. Both ventures folded before the tax paperwork made sense. My father kept signing checks. When Ryan married his first wife at 23 after knowing her for barely 5 months, my father covered the reception. When the divorce came 15 months later, he paid the attorney. When Ryan married again and then divorced again, my father repeated his favorite excuse whenever Ryan burned through another chance. Men take time to settle. I have added it up. Across 19 years, my father put roughly $134,000 into Ryan. Tuition, startup money, wedding bills, a DUI bond, legal fees, and rent on 3 apartments after 2 marriages fell apart. That was the investment he made in the son he kept. The daughter he threw away got a trash bag and a dark porch. By the time Ryan was 33, he had almost $47,500 in credit card debt, no degree, no trade license, and no steady address. I had a nursing license, a growing business, and a daughter who could meet anyone's eyes without shrinking. My father's plan had one serious flaw. He confused a last name with a future. By 2016, I had 4 years of hospital experience at Piedmont Regional Medical Center in Hawthorne, mostly on the transitional care floor. Surgical recovery, heart failure flares, pneumonia, COPD, patients who were afraid and too proud to say so. That floor taught me quickly that dignity matters more than speed. I was good at the work. Not because I was born gifted, because I noticed things. I listened when a patient said they were scared. I did not hand them discharge papers like I was passing out flyers. I remembered names, favorite soups, which sons visited, and which daughters called only when bills arrived. In 2019, I opened Bright Harbor Home Care, LLC. At first, it was 4 employees, counting me, in a rented room above a laundromat on Willow Street. We cared for elderly patients in their own homes. Wound care, medication management, vitals, help with bathing. Companionship when a person did not need a hospital but could not quite manage alone. Hospitals called it continuity of care. I called it showing up. I started the business because of Margaret Ellis. She got sick when I was 23, heart failure, slow, stubborn, and unfair. I moved into her house again for the last 9 months of her life, this time as the caregiver. I washed her hair. I sorted pills into little plastic boxes. I checked her ankles for swelling. I held her hand on the morning she did not wake up. Margaret was the first person who chose me without asking what it would cost her. Building my life around the lesson she taught me was the only way I knew how to thank her. A person does not become family because a form says so. A person becomes family by opening the door. Madison was 11 when I opened the agency. After school, she helped me fold towels, stack gloves, label supply bins, and sort pill organizers with careful block letters. Once, a patient's granddaughter watched her work and said, "Your mom takes care of everyone." Madison looked up and said, "She fixes people." The granddaughter smiled. "She started with you." Madison did not argue. One afternoon, the office phone rang. A woman's voice came through, thin and breathy. "I live in Pine Hollow," she said. "My name is Patricia Morgan. I need a nurse to come to my house." Pine Hollow. I had not been back in 16 years. 35 minutes east on State Road 18. The same road Margaret had driven the night she found me at that gas station. Now I drove it in the opposite direction, wearing scrubs, with my name embroidered on my chest and a blood pressure cuff in my work bag. Patricia Morgan was 68, stage 3 copped, alone in a clapboard house 2 blocks from Riverbend Baptist Church. That was the church my parents attended every Sunday. My father was a deacon there. Patricia did not recognize me at first. She looked down at the intake form and frowned at the company name. "Bright Harbor Home Care," she said. "You are Emily Carter, Carter like Robert Carter." I clipped the pulse oximeter onto her finger and wrapped the cuff around her arm. "His daughter," I said. The room went quiet except for the soft hiss of her oxygen concentrator. Patricia studied my face while the numbers on the oximeter climbed. "You are the girl who left," she finally said. I pumped the cuff. "I am the girl who was told to leave." Patricia's expression shifted. "Robert told the church you had fallen into sinful choices." That sounded exactly like him. Sinful choices. He knew how to turn cruelty into scripture when it suited him. I released the valve and wrote down the numbers. Blood pressure 122/80. Oxygen saturation 90, too low to ignore. "I always figured there was another side," Patricia said. I capped my pen. "Your oxygen is running low today, Mrs. Morgan. I want to adjust your nebulizer schedule and come back Friday." She looked at me as if 19 years of my father's story had just cracked open. "You come back whenever you say you need to, honey." Over the next 3 years, from 2022 through early 2026, I took on more patients in Pine Hollow. Frank Simmons, 82, recovering from a hip replacement. Evelyn Morris, 75, and her sister Janet Morris, 78, both managing diabetes. Nancy Coleman, 71, recovering after a stroke. Arthur Bennett, 84, entering hospice care. Carol Fletcher, 73, with rheumatoid arthritis so advanced she could not open a childproof cap. Every one of them eventually worked out that I was Robert Carter's daughter. Every one of them had heard his version. And every one of them watched me come back again and again, check their vitals, change dressings, adjust medication schedules, and sit at kitchen tables while they admitted they were afraid. Small towns do not always need a public confession to change their minds. Sometimes they need repetition. Nobody stood up in church and accused my father of lying. Nobody marched to his porch and demanded an apology. But sometime in 2024, the weekly prayer list at Riverbend Baptist gained a new sentence. "Bless Emily and her daughter, Madison," Patricia told me during a visit. She smiled in a way that made me suspect she had more than a little to do with it. My coworker, Karen Brooks, was another RN at Bright Harbor. She was direct in the way only a nurse with 17 years of experience can be direct. She believed bad news should be delivered cleanly without ribbons. One evening, while we restocked wound care kits, she said, "You should write to the pastor, put the facts in front of him. Otherwise, your father gets to keep being the narrator." I leaned against the counter. Maybe. That night, I sat at my kitchen table in Hawthorne, back straight, hands on the laptop, the same posture I had used during years of studying on Margaret's floor. I started a letter to Pastor Thomas Reed at Riverbend Baptist Church in Pine Hollow. I wrote about the town that had once prayed over my father's pain while I disappeared from their view. I wrote about taking blood pressures for people who had believed I ran away. I wrote that over time, without one speech or confrontation, those same people had begun seeing me for themselves. If you have ever had to prove your character by living instead of explaining, stay with me. This story was not close to over. April 2026. My phone buzzed while I was charting Patricia's latest breathing test results. Unknown number. I answered because patient relatives use strange numbers all the time. "Hey, Em." I knew the voice right away. Older, rougher, but with the same lazy rhythm, like he was always buying himself time. Ryan Carter. "Been a long while," he said. I said nothing. I let the silence do its work. He cleared his throat. "Listen, Mom and Dad have been talking about you." "No, they have not." "All right," he said quickly. "I told them they should." "Why?" "Because family is family." While he talked, I opened my laptop and searched his name. There it was. Pressure washing business dissolved in 2024. 2 divorce filings in Pine County. A contractor's lien attached to a property outside Dunley. Same pattern, different year. Ryan kept talking about time, forgiveness, and blood ties. Then he slipped in what he had actually called to ask. "I heard you are doing pretty well. Got your own company, got a kid too." He paused. "A boy, right?" I took the phone away from my ear and stared at it. "What did you say?" "Somebody told me you had a son." I did not correct him. I let the lie sit there. On the other end, I could almost hear him calculating. A nephew, a young man, someone connected to Emily's business, Emily's money, Emily's stability. He did not ask the child's name. He did not ask age, health, school, interests. Nothing that would require seeing a person instead of a possibility. "I will think about calling them," I said. "But Ryan, do not call again unless I contact you first." I ended the call and sat in my car outside Nancy Coleman's house long enough for the dashboard to go dark. 2 mornings later, my apartment landline rang at 7. I was pouring coffee for Madison. She had taken up coffee during her first semester in the nursing program, and I had decided some battles were not worth fighting. My father's voice came through the receiver like a hand reaching out of the past, still expecting me to stand still. "Emily, your brother says you have done well. Your mother and I would like to meet your boy." "My boy?" "Your son," Robert said, as if I was the one being difficult. "Ryan says you have a son." In the background, I heard my mother murmur something. Linda had spent nearly 40 years filling the silence around Robert's voice without ever truly stepping into it. "We are getting older," he said. "A man should know his grandson." Grandson, he had already decided. Madison looked up from her mug, eyebrows raised. I shook my head once, then my mother took the phone. "Emily, sweetheart," she said softly, "we only want to see you." Her voice sounded like someone opening a door into a room she had been afraid of for years. "Why now, Mom?" I asked. 19 years is a long time to suddenly want to visit. She breathed in. "Your father has been under pressure. Ryan has had a hard stretch." There it was, not love, not regret. Not a mother waking up with my name in her mouth. Ryan's trouble. Robert's plumbing business had closed the year before. I already knew, a business search had confirmed it. They were reaching for me because the future they funded had collapsed and the one they discarded was paying her own bills. "I will think about it," I said. Linda whispered, "Thank you, Emily." I hung up. Madison said nothing. She handed me my coffee, and we stood in the kitchen drinking from our mugs in silence. That evening, I sat Madison down at the table. She was 18, almost 19, in her second year at Cedar Ridge Community College's nursing program, and already steadier than I had been at twice her age. I told her everything again, not because she did not know, but because the facts had a new weight now. "Your grandfather threw me out when I was 16 and pregnant with you." Your grandmother stood there and allowed it. Madison had known the outline since she was 14. She had asked why she did not have grandparents, and I had decided that the truth, said plainly, was better than a pretty lie. "They called," I said. "They asked to see you." Her jaw set. She did not realize how much it looked like mine. "They think I am a boy," I added. Ryan told them I had a son. She blinked once. They never asked. Not once. She sat quietly for almost a full minute. I did not rush her. This was not shock exactly. It was confirmation. She had always suspected their absence was built, not accidental. Now she could see the blueprint. I want to go, Madison said at last. Not because of them, because of me. I want to look at the kind of people who can throw away a daughter and come back later asking about inventory. I almost smiled. She had Margaret's bluntness and my patience. That combination was dangerous for anyone who underestimated her. Then we do it our way, I said. Where? Pine Hollow is holding a community health fair in a few weeks. Bright Harbor has a booth there. The agency was nominated for an award. If they ask to see you, they can do it there. Madison nodded. Good, let them walk into your world. That same week, I opened the letter to Pastor Thomas Reed again. I had been adding to it slowly, paragraph by paragraph, like measuring out medication. The letter set out the events of November 2007. No dramatic pleading. No emotional decorations, just the sequence. My father told me to pack one bag. My mother did not step in. Ryan asked for my room before I made it to the street. The next Sunday, Robert stood in Riverbend Baptist and told the congregation I had wandered into sin and broken the family's heart. They had prayed for him and Linda like I was dead. I printed the letter, 3 pages. Karen read it in the break room and set it down without touching the soup she had brought for lunch. This will wreck him, she said. Send it before the fair. Let Pastor Reed know the truth before your father climbs onto another stage and plays victim. I folded the pages, slid them into an envelope, wrote the church office address, and put a stamp on it. Then I left it on the kitchen counter. For the next 12 days, I saw that envelope every morning while pouring coffee. Madison saw it too, but she never asked. She knew me well enough to understand that a stamped letter sitting out for nearly 2 weeks was not waiting for a mailbox. It was waiting for a decision. One night, while I was packing my nursing bag for the next day, I glanced from the envelope to the framed photograph of Margaret Ellis by the door. Margaret had never written anyone a letter explaining me. She had opened the door. I called my father on a Tuesday afternoon. He answered before the second ring. Maybe he had been waiting, maybe the house was just quiet now that the business phone no longer rang. There is a community health fair in Pine Hollow on Saturday, June 20th, I said. I will have a booth there. If you and Mom want to come, you can. Will the boy be there? My child will be there. He heard exactly what he wanted. Good, he said. Your mother will be glad. It is time. There was a pause. I could almost feel him staging the day in his head. Where he would stand, who would see him, how he would turn 19 years of silence into one generous public gesture. For Robert Carter, every gathering was a platform if enough people were watching. Ryan may come too, he added. That is Ryan's decision. I hung up. Later that afternoon, I checked my email and found a message from the Pine Hollow Wellness Alliance. The subject line read, Community Care Partner Finalist Notification. Patricia had done it. She had nominated Bright Harbor Home Care for their annual community award. The winner would be announced at the fair from the main stage. My throat tightened, not because I needed a trophy, but because of the timing. My father was planning to walk into Pine Hollow's health fair on the same day the town was preparing to say my name publicly for the work I had done. He did not know about the nomination. He did not know Patricia had written the letter. He was coming to meet a grandson who did not exist at an event that was already part of my life. The irony did not feel sweet. It did make me steady. The following Thursday, I drove to Pine Hollow for Patricia's regular visit. She was having a decent day. Oxygen holding at 92. Appetite better. A stack of old church bulletins sat on the side table, divided into piles. Cleaning out the hall closet, she said. 42 years of paper. You would think I had been running the county archive. She asked if I could help carry a box to the donation bin. I set it on the kitchen table and began sorting. Hymnals, women's ministry schedules, potluck lists, Christmas programs with curled corners. Then my hand stopped on a thin booklet with a blue-gray cover. Riverbend Baptist Church Directory, Winter 2007. The month after my father put me out. I opened it near the back and found the prayer requests handwritten in dark ink. My own name caught my eye before I could prepare myself. Please pray for Robert and Linda Carter as they mourn the loss of their daughter Emily to sinful rebellion. May God guide her back home. I read it twice. Loss. Mourn. He had not merely told people I left. He had staged grief. He had stood in front of a congregation, let his voice break, and accepted their sympathy while I was sleeping under Margaret Ellis's spare quilt, 9 weeks pregnant and only 14 miles away. Patricia watched me from her recliner. I was there when he read that out, she said quietly. His voice shook, people cried. Linda had to sit down. Folks brought food for days. The directory lay open on my knees. The ink looked slightly smeared, as if someone had touched the page too soon. Was always good at performance, I said. Patricia kept talking, not because I asked, but because the booklet had opened something she had carried too long. He called a special prayer circle that week. Said you had taken up with some boy from another county. Said he had tried to stop you. Said you chose that boy over your home. I remember one line exactly because I wrote it down in my journal. He said, "You cannot hold a child who is determined to fall." She adjusted the tubing under her nose. Linda cried the whole time. People brought casseroles, cards, flowers. Denise Whitman wrote a note saying she was praying for your broken family. Evelyn and Janet brought a peach pie and sat with Linda for an afternoon. Patricia looked over her glasses. It felt like a funeral, Emily. A funeral for someone still alive. I perched on the edge of her couch with the directory in my lap and my pen in my hand. I had been about to write her blood pressure on the chart, but I could not remember the reading anymore. "Mrs. Morgan," I said, careful to keep my voice level, "how many casseroles did anyone bring me when I was on a porch with my clothes in a trash bag?" Patricia shook her head. "None, honey, nobody knew where you were." I closed the directory and set it on top of my work bag. I did not ask if I could take it. Patricia did not ask me to leave it. That little booklet held the frame of a lie my father had protected for nearly 2 decades. "He did not erase me," I said. "He buried me, then let the church bring supper." A week before the fair, Ryan called again. I had told him not to. Ryan had never been good with boundaries unless they belonged to him. "So this home care thing," he said. "It is a real company, you own it." I was driving back to Hawthorne after seeing Frank Simmons, one hand on the wheel. "Why?" "Just asking." Running a business is impressive. Must feel nice having steady money. "Ryan, what?" "Ask the question you called to ask." He exhaled and the fake casual tone vanished. "I am in a tight place, Em. Some credit cards got away from me." "How much?" "About 47.5. The number sat in the car with me. $47,500. My father had spent more than that trying to rescue Ryan from his own choices twice over. "What do you expect me to do?" "Not give me cash, not exactly. Maybe co-sign a consolidation loan, or I could help at your company. I am good with people, scheduling intake, whatever." "Ryan, what? You asked for my bedroom while I was still leaving the house. Now you are asking for my money while I am still driving away from the past you helped create. The answer is no." Silence. Then he muttered, "That is cold. That is a boundary." He hung up. I drove the rest of the way with the windows down and no music, letting the highway air clear the sound of his voice from the car. Madison was in the kitchen when I got home. She read my face the way I read a monitor. Ryan, money. $47,500 of money." She opened the fridge and pulled out leftover pasta. "Must be amazing to fail in such luxury," she said. For the first time all week, I laughed. The letter still sat on the counter between the fruit bowl and the salt shaker, the stamp crooked in the corner. Karen asked about it again while we stocked supplies in the office closet. "Did you mail it?" "No. Emily, the fair is 10 days away. If Pastor Reed reads that this week, Robert cannot walk in and rewrite the story." She was right. As a strategy, it was clean. Send the truth ahead. Deny him the stage. Let the pastor know before Robert could perform reconciliation for a crowd. After work, I drove to the Hawthorne post office and parked near the blue collection box. The engine was off. The envelope sat on the passenger seat beside the church directory I still had not returned to Patricia. I lifted the envelope and read the address in my own careful print. Pastor Thomas Reed, Riverbend Baptist Church, 28 Magnolia Lane, Pine Hollow, Georgia. I thought about Margaret. She never argued with my father's version. She never explained to the town what he had done. She never tried to force people to believe her. She just came to get me from a gas station, opened her spare room, and let the next 19 years answer for themselves. I thought about the patients in Pine Hollow who already knew me. The ones who had watched me come into their kitchens, check oxygen, change dressings, hold frightened hands, and leave without asking them to take sides. They did not need a letter. They had seen enough. I turned the key, pulled out of the post office lot, and drove past the mailbox without stopping. The letter came home with me, still unsealed and unsent. I had the truth in my hand, 3 pages addressed to the church leader who had once led prayers over my living body as if it had already been lowered into the ground. Every practical instinct told me to mail it. But I kept driving because I understood something that changed how the story would end. You need to know what happened at that fair. When I got home, I put the envelope on the kitchen table. Madison sat at the counter with a pharmacology textbook open to respiratory medications. She looked up when my keys hit the bowl. "Did you send it?" "No." "Why not?" I sat across from her. The envelope lay between us like evidence in a room too quiet for a trial. "Because sending this means I am still trying to convince people who already know me," I said. "Patricia knows. Frank knows. Evelyn and Janet know. Nancy knows. They have watched me change bandages, adjust breathing treatments, and sit in their homes when they were afraid. A letter asks them to trust my words. They already trust what they have seen." Madison closed the textbook. "Then what are you going to do?" "Nothing," she gave me a look. "Nothing as in avoid the fair or nothing as in go and let whatever happens happen. I am going. I will hang my banner, check blood pressures, hand out brochures, and be exactly the person I have been. If Robert wants to step in front of a microphone and tell my patients he is proud of me, that is his choice." I lifted the envelope, held it for a moment, tore it in half, tore the halves again, and dropped the pieces into the trash under the sink. Madison watched without speaking. I washed my hands afterward. "Habit, always habit." "Your grandfather used words to bury me," I said. "I am not going to use more words to dig myself out. I am already standing in daylight." During the week before the fair, I packed everything we needed. A white banner with deep blue lettering, Bright Harbor Home Care serving Pine Hollow since 2022. Brochures about fall prevention, blood pressure cuffs, a folding table, a clean tablecloth, clipboards, pens, a jar of wrapped peppermints because nearly every patient had told me the same thing over the years. A mint made a checkup feel less like a doctor's office. Madison helped load the car on Saturday morning. She wore a volunteer badge she had made herself and laminated at the office. It said Madison Carter, nursing student, Cedar Ridge Community College. She had taken the badge seriously. I took a moment to be proud of that. The night before, I called Patricia. "Robert and Linda are coming tomorrow," I said. The line went still for half a breath. I thought that day would come sooner or later. "He thinks Madison is a son." Patricia gave a soft sound that might have been a laugh if it had not carried so much exhaustion. Robert always heard the parts that suited him. I did not ask her to defend me. I did not ask her to bring the directory. I did not lay out a plan. I told her the truth and let her decide what to do with it. That was one difference between me and my father. He told stories so people would follow his script. I told facts and allowed people to keep their own minds. After the call, I checked on Madison. She had her clothes laid across her chair, a clean polo, khaki pants, white sneakers. "You look ready for a job interview," I said. "I am meeting my grandparents for the first time," she answered. "I want them to understand what they missed." I hung my own clothes on the bedroom door, scrubs freshly pressed. My name stitched above the pocket, Emily Carter, RN. Same last name, same town, nothing else the same. I slept badly. I stared at the ceiling and thought about something Margaret told me when Madison was 3 days old. Margaret had come to the hospital to help. On the second afternoon, she went outside for air and came back with a guarded look, as though she was deciding whether the truth would split me open. "There was a woman in a tan minivan in the parking lot," she said. "She sat there for nearly 90 minutes. I went over to ask if she needed help and she drove away." I wrote down the plate. I knew. My mother's tan Dodge minivan. Linda had driven 35 minutes to the hospital where her granddaughter had been born. She waited in the hospital lot for an hour and a half. She never came inside. She never held Madison. She never gave her name at the desk. She watched the building through the windshield and then drove back home to the church leader who had put me out. She made that drive once. Then for 19 years, she chose not to make it again. She had known where I was. She had always known. The worst part was not that she stayed away. The worst part was knowing she had been close enough to walk through the sliding doors and still turned the key instead. I rolled onto my side and pressed my face into the pillow. The next day, Linda would stand in front of me at a fair in Pine Hollow. She would probably cry. She might reach for my hands. And I would have to decide whether a woman who sat outside the hospital and drove away had earned the right to be called mother. Friday evening, the night before the fair, Ryan called. Of course he did. Dad has been telling people at church he is going to introduce his grandson tomorrow, he said. He sounded almost pleased, which told me he had already spotted an angle for himself. He asked Pastor Reed if he could say a few things during the ceremony. A few things. Something about family coming home and forgiveness. Mom says he has been practicing in the kitchen all week. I perched on the edge of my bed and pressed my thumb into my temple. Robert was planning to use my recognition event as a stage for public reconciliation. He would walk to the microphone, call me his daughter, welcome me back, and present the grandson he had invented in his head. The crowd would applaud his generosity. It was 2007 all over again. Only this time, instead of burying me, he planned to resurrect me. On his terms. In his words. In front of his audience. Pastor Reed had said yes because he did not know the whole story, because I had never mailed the letter. Let him, I said. Ryan hesitated. What? Let him say whatever he wants. You are not going to stop him. No, I could hear Ryan trying to find the trick. He could not. There was no trick. I was not outmaneuvering my father. I was simply going to stand in the same place as the truth and see which one of us stayed upright. See you tomorrow, Ryan, I said, and ended the call. Saturday, June 20th. I woke at 5:20 before the alarm. My heart was already pacing ahead of me. Madison was in the kitchen with coffee, dressed and ready, her badge clipped neatly near her collar. She had scrambled eggs on a plate. I could not eat. We packed the last supplies and drove the 35 minutes to Pine Hollow almost without speaking. State Road 18 was quiet that early, just a few work trucks and the pale line of morning spreading over the fields. The community park was already being set up when we arrived at 7. White tents stood in rows. At the far end, a small wooden stage held a microphone and 2 speakers. Folding chairs faced the stage, maybe 130 of them. The air smelled like cut grass, coffee, and asphalt beginning to warm. I set our booth in the 3rd row. Banner tied, brochures fanned, blood pressure cuffs laid out. Peppermint jar opened. Madison taped a hand-lettered sign to the tablecloth. Free blood pressure checks. Everyone welcome. Patricia arrived at 8:40 in her wheelchair, oxygen tank secured behind her, pushed by her nephew. She rolled straight to my booth and wrapped her fingers around my wrist with surprising strength. Whatever happens today, she said, remember that you are not the one on trial. I squeezed her hand. I know. By 10, the park was filling. Families with strollers. Church groups in matching shirts. The Veterans Club had a barbecue trailer already smoking near the far fence. People drifted past, picked up brochures, asked questions about home visits for aging parents. I kept watching the entrance from behind the booth. Madison took a woman's blood pressure, calm and precise, reading the cuff like she had been doing it for years. At 10:18, a silver pickup turned into the gravel lot. My father's truck. The old Carter and Son Pipeworks lettering had been scraped off the door, but you could still see the faded outline if the light hit right. Linda sat in the passenger seat. Ryan climbed out of the back. Robert walked toward the tents like a man entering a building he owned. Shoulders back, shirt pressed. Chin lifted. Linda followed 3 steps behind him. Always 3 steps, I realized. Her whole married life could be measured by that distance. Ryan lagged farther back, hands in his pockets, scanning the crowd the way a man looks for the easiest exit and the nearest advantage. Robert stopped at my booth. His eyes moved over the banner, the brochures, my scrubs, Madison's polo. Then he focused on Madison. He was looking for a young man, a grandson, maybe someone tall with his jaw, somebody he could claim without doing any of the years before it. Instead, he saw an 18-year-old woman with my cheekbones, Margaret's steady posture, and a badge that read Madison Carter. Who is this? He asked. This is Madison, I said. My daughter. His face moved through confusion, adjustment, and recovery in less than 3 seconds. Your daughter, he repeated. I thought. He looked back at Ryan. Ryan lifted one shoulder as if the misunderstanding had floated down from the sky. Well, Robert said, straightening his collar, a granddaughter, that is fine too. His voice made the words polite, his face did not. Patricia, 2 booths away, watched from her wheelchair. She met my eyes for 1 second, then looked toward the stage. Linda stepped closer and reached for Madison's hand. Madison allowed it for a brief moment, then gently pulled away. "It is nice to meet you, Mrs. Carter," Madison said. "Not Grandma, not Nana, Mrs. Carter." Linda's mouth trembled. Robert cleared his throat. "We can talk after the ceremony," he said. "I am saying a few words at the stage." He turned away like the script had only hit a minor snag. I watched him walk toward the microphone and remembered him standing in our doorway, saying there was room for just one future he could afford. He was still trying to buy one. The ceremony began at noon. The MC was a county commissioner named Helen Parker. She thanked sponsors, recognized volunteers, and spoke for a few minutes about health access in rural areas. Then she reached the final award. This year's Community Care Partner Award goes to an organization that has quietly changed home care for many families in Pine Hollow, she said. Bright Harbor Home Care. The applause came strong. Not polite. Not automatic. Real applause with people turning in their seats to find me. I stood. Madison squeezed my elbow. I began walking toward the stage. My father moved faster. He had been standing near the steps, waiting. Before I was halfway there, he was already at the microphone. Pastor Reed, seated in the front row, nodded as if this had been arranged. Robert adjusted the mic with both hands. "If I could have just a moment," he said. The crowd quieted. He looked out at neighbors, church members, people who had brought food to his house and signed sympathy cards because they believed the story he had fed them for 19 years. "Many of you know my family has walked through a hard season," he began. 19 years ago, we lost our daughter Emily." He let the word lost hang there. "But God has a way of restoring what is broken. Today Emily has returned. She is a nurse now, and I always knew there was goodness in her." A few people gave the small-town chuckle people give confident men before they understand what is happening. Robert smiled warmly. "I stand here as a proud father to say, welcome home, Emily." He opened his arms toward me, a performance of forgiveness offered to the person he had wronged. I stood at the bottom of the steps and did not climb them. The applause stumbled. His arms stayed open. "Come on, sweetheart," he said into the microphone. "Your father has waited a long time for this hug." The silence stretched until I could hear the barbecue trailer hiss behind the tents. Then a wheelchair squeaked. Patricia rolled forward from the second row, oxygen tank rattling softly against the frame. Her nephew stepped aside and let her pass. She stopped beside the stage steps and looked up at Robert. Then she turned toward the crowd. "Robert," she said, "I need to say something." She did not have the microphone, but she had spent over 40 years in church, and women like Patricia know how to make a room hear them. "I have belonged to Riverbend Baptist for 43 years, she said. "I remember the prayer circle Robert held in the winter of 2007. He told us Emily had run off with a boy. He told us she had broken his and Linda's hearts." His voice shook when he said it, and I remember thinking, that poor family. She paused to fix the cannula under her nose. "We cried with them, we brought food. Denise Whitman brought a casserole with the cornbread topping. Evelyn and Janet brought peach pie. We treated it like a funeral because that is how Robert made it feel." No one moved. "Emily Carter has been my home nurse for nearly 4 years. She drives from Hawthorne twice a week. 35 minutes each way. She checks my oxygen, adjusts my medicines, and sits with me when I cannot get my breath. She has never asked me to take her side. She never told me what happened in 2007. Patricia turned her face toward Robert. "She did not need to. I have eyes. I have a memory." Robert's jaw tightened. Patricia continued. "You did not lose your daughter. You put her out at 16, pregnant, at night, carrying a trash bag. Every dish we brought to your house sat on top of a lie." In the middle of the crowd, Frank Simmons slowly rose with both hands on his walker. Then Evelyn Morris stood. Then Janet Morris, holding her sister's elbow. They did not speak. They did not have to. Their standing said enough. Robert's face flushed a deep red I had seen once before, the night he opened the front door and made me walk through it. "You do not know what happened in my house," he said. The microphone caught every edge of his voice. "That was private. That was between me and my family." "We were your church, Robert," Patricia said. "You made it our concern when you asked us to pray over it." He grabbed the mic stand. "She was 16 and pregnant. What kind of father would?" He stopped. The unfinished sentence stayed in the humid air. He had said it himself. Into a microphone. In front of more than 100 people who had spent 19 years believing I chose to leave, believing Robert was the one who had suffered, believing I had broken a home he tried to save. Now he had confirmed the truth with his own mouth. His daughter had been 16, pregnant, and he had put her out. The story he had polished for nearly 2 decades collapsed inside one sentence he could not finish. Patricia said nothing else. She only watched him. Robert turned toward me. "Is this what you wanted?" His voice had lost its smoothness. "To shame me in front of everyone, after I came here to welcome you back?" I climbed the 3 steps to the stage and stood beside the microphone. I did not take it from him. I did not raise my voice. I spoke the way I speak to a frightened patient who needs truth more than comfort. "I did not arrange this, Dad. I did not mail a letter. I did not make a speech. I came back to the town you told I was lost, and I cared for the people you said I had abandoned." I paused. "You told me this family could afford only one future. You were right about that. You just chose the wrong one." Robert stared at me. His mouth opened, but no words came. The crowd did not clap. It did not need to. He stepped away from the microphone and walked off the stage, shoulders curved like he was pushing through wind no one else could feel. Linda stood near our tent, crying silently. Old tears. The kind that seemed to have been waiting in the body for years. Ryan was already heading for the parking lot. I stepped down from the stage and walked back toward my booth. Linda intercepted me between 2 tent poles. She held a small cardboard box against her chest. It was creased along the corners, the kind of box shoes come in. She handed it to me. I lifted the lid. Inside lay the baby blanket I had knitted at 16. Pale yellow yarn, simple rose, edges curling from years folded in darkness. 19 years she had kept it. 19 years under a bed or in a closet while the girl who made it learned how to raise a child without her. "I kept it," Linda whispered. I should have done more." I lifted the blanket and ran my thumb over the stitches. They were uneven. I had taught myself from an old library book Margaret had lent me, and the tension wandered all over the place. A 16-year-old trying to make something soft for a baby she did not yet know how to protect. I looked at my mother. "You drove to the hospital when Madison was born," I said. "You waited in the hospital lot for 90 minutes, then you drove away." Linda covered her mouth. Her shoulders shook. "You knew where I was, Mom. You just never came through the door." I folded the blanket, placed it back in the box, and handed it to her. "Keep it. You need it more than I do." Later, while I was loading supplies into the car, Ryan appeared beside the open trunk. He had loosened his collar and put on the casual look he used when he wanted something without saying so too quickly. "Look, Em," he said. "Today got intense, but we are still family. Once everything settles, maybe we can talk about." "A co-signer?" I asked. $47,500, he blinked. "I was just saying, you asked for my room while I was still walking out. Now you are asking for my wallet while I am still packing up. A different parking lot does not make you a different brother." His jaw shifted. For a second I thought he might say something real, something not built around need or calculation. Then the moment passed. He pushed away from the trunk and walked across the gravel toward the silver truck. Robert sat behind the wheel, staring forward, engine already running. Linda climbed in with the box in her lap. The truck pulled out, tires lifting dust that drifted over the grass and settled. The fair kept going. That is how small towns work. A scene can split the day open, and 10 minutes later somebody asks whether there is more barbecue. People came to my booth through the afternoon, not to discuss Robert. They came for blood pressure checks, fall prevention brochures, and information about home visits for their parents. Nancy Coleman brought me a plate without asking whether I had eaten. Evelyn and Janet sat behind the booth in folding chairs, while Madison handled the front table. Frank Simmons asked Madison about nursing school, and she explained medication classes with a calmness that made me realize she was not pretending to be composed. She simply was. Patricia rolled over as we were packing the banner. "You are still Community Care Partner of the Year," she said, "in case all that noise made you forget." I laughed, really laughed, the kind that opens something in your chest. "I did not forget." "Good," she said, "because I wrote a 5-page nomination and I refused to do it twice." Madison slipped her arm through mine. The sun was dropping and tents were coming down around us. Somewhere across town, Robert was probably sitting in his living room trying to figure out how to sit in the deacon's row on Sunday after more than 100 people heard him confirm the truth himself. That was no longer mine to solve. My only decision was whether to take State Road 18 back to Hawthorne or the back way by the mill, and whether Madison wanted milkshakes on the drive home. As we folded the banner, Madison looked at me. "Mom, That blanket you made when you were 16, she said. You taught yourself? From a library book. Could you teach me? Yes, I said, I can teach you. We drove back to Hawthorne on State Road 18, 35 minutes. The same road my mother had taken to the hospital and back without coming inside. The same road I had driven for years to care for people who now knew my father's story was never the truth. The windows were down. The evening smelled like pine, warm pavement, and smoke from someone's grill. Madison stayed quiet for most of the ride. Then, about 15 minutes from home, she turned from the window. I am glad I saw them, she said. Yeah, because now I know something. I glanced over. She looked straight at me. You did not just survive them, Mom, you outgrew them. I kept both hands on the wheel and drove toward home.